My family dumped me in the worst room on vacation, and my mom said, "He's the spare. He won't mind." They had no idea I'd inherited the hotel from my grandpa. I let them find out the hard way who controlled the rooms. What would you do if your own mother looked you in the eye and called you the spare, right in front of your entire family, while standing in a hotel that your grandfather secretly left to you? My name is Callan Whitaker. I'm 31 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the family afterthought. Not the firstborn, not the baby, just the middle one, the extra seat at the dinner table, the name that gets mentioned last on Christmas cards, the son who exists somewhere between an obligation and an oversight. My older brother Spencer? He was the son. Everything in the Whitaker family orbited around him. First to graduate, first to get the corner office, first to bring home a polished fiancée named Madeline who knew exactly how to laugh at my mother's jokes and compliment my father's ties. Spencer had the face, the voice, the confidence. He walked into rooms, and people noticed. I walked into rooms, and people moved aside to let Spencer through. My mother, Evelyn, never hid who her favorite was. She didn't need to. It was in every introduction. "This is Spencer, our eldest. He's doing incredible things at his firm. And this is Callan." No title, no descriptor. Just Callan. Like my name alone was supposed to be enough of an explanation for why I didn't matter as much. My father, Harold, was a different kind of problem. He wasn't cruel. He was absent. Physically present, but emotionally checked out. He'd nod along to whatever Evelyn said, avoid confrontation at all costs, and retreat into his study whenever things got uncomfortable. He never defended me. Not because he disagreed with how I was treated, but because defending me would have meant disagreeing with Evelyn. And Harold Whitaker didn't do conflict. But there was one person in this family who saw me. Really saw me. My grandfather, Franklin Whitaker. Grandpa Franklin was a self-made man in every sense of the word. He grew up with nothing. No inheritance, no connections, no safety net. He worked construction in his 20s, saved every dollar, and by his mid-30s, he bought a small piece of beachfront property that everyone told him was worthless. He built a hotel on it. Started small, 12 rooms, no pool, a front desk made from reclaimed wood. He ran it himself for years. Cleaned the rooms, cooked breakfast, greeted every guest by name. By the time I was born, the Whitaker Grand had grown into a stunning 42-room beachfront property with a reputation that brought guests back year after year. It wasn't a chain hotel. It wasn't flashy or corporate. It was personal. Every detail had Grandpa's fingerprints on it. The hand-painted tiles in the lobby, the photographs on the walls, the garden he maintained himself until his knees gave out. I spent my childhood at that hotel. Not because my parents sent me there. They were too busy curating Spencer's life, but because I chose to go. Every summer, every school break, every long weekend I could manage. I'd show up at Grandpa's door with a backpack, and he'd put me to work. I mopped floors, folded towels, helped in the kitchen, learned how to greet guests and handle complaints. Grandpa never treated me like a kid. He treated me like a partner. We'd sit on the rooftop terrace at night, just the two of us, looking at the ocean, and he'd tell me stories about building the hotel. About the years when he couldn't make rent. About the storm that nearly destroyed the East Wing in '94. About the first guest who ever left a 5-star review. "You know why I'm telling you all this, Callan?" he said to me once. "Because you like talking?" He laughed. That deep, warm laugh that made you feel like everything was going to be okay. Because someday, you'll understand why it matters. I didn't understand then. I do now. Grandpa Franklin passed away 11 months ago. Pancreatic cancer. Fast and merciless. By the time they caught it, he had weeks, not months. I was there. Every single day. I drove 2 hours each way to sit beside his hospital bed, read him the newspaper, tell him about my week, hold his hand when the pain got bad. Some nights I slept in the chair next to him because I couldn't bear the thought of him waking up alone. Spencer visited twice. Both times, he stayed less than an hour. Madeline came once, took a photo with Grandpa for her social media, captioned it, "Family is everything," with a heart emoji, and never came back. My parents visited on weekends, briefly, awkwardly. Evelyn would pat Grandpa's hand and say, "You're looking better, Dad," even when he clearly wasn't. Harold would stand by the window and check his phone. Grandpa noticed. He noticed everything. 3 days before he died, he asked everyone to leave the room. Everyone except me. Callan, I need you to listen carefully. I'm listening, Grandpa. I've made arrangements. The hotel, it's yours. I started to protest, but he squeezed my hand. Don't argue with a dying man. It's rude. He smiled, but his eyes were serious. My lawyer has everything. The deed, the transfer documents, the operational accounts. Victor knows. He'll help you. Victor Alvarez, Grandpa's general manager for over 15 years. More than an employee, a brother in everything but blood. There's one more thing, Grandpa said. He reached under his pillow and pulled out a small bundle of envelopes. Each one had a name written on it in his handwriting. Evelyn, Harold, Spencer. These are for them. But not yet. You'll know when the time is right. Grandpa, what's in them? He looked at me with those tired, knowing eyes. The truth. The things I should have said while I had the strength. Don't open them, Callan. Just keep them safe. And when the moment comes, and it will come, let them read what I couldn't say out loud. He died on a Thursday morning. I was holding his hand. The will reading was a circus. The whole family gathered. Evelyn in her black dress and pearl earrings, Harold in his press suit, Spencer and Madeline looking like they'd stepped off a magazine cover. They sat in the lawyer's office like they were waiting to collect a prize. The lawyer went through the basics first. The house went to my parents. Savings were split between Spencer and me. Though Spencer's portion was notably larger because, as Grandpa had written, Spencer has more expensive habits. Everyone chuckled at that. Classic Franklin humor. Then the lawyer said, regarding the hotel property known as the Whitaker Grand. The room went still. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The property, in its entirety, including all operational assets, accounts, and intellectual property, is bequeathed to Callan James Whitaker. Silence. Spencer's jaw tightened. Madeline's smile froze. My mother looked at me like I'd stolen something from her purse. That can't be right, Spencer said. It's right, the lawyer confirmed. Mr. Franklin Whitaker was very specific. The documents were prepared, reviewed, and notarized over the course of 2 years. This was not a last-minute decision. 2 years. Grandpa had planned this 2 years before he died. The car ride home was silent. Nobody congratulated me. Nobody said a word. And just like that, the subject was buried. The family moved on as if the hotel didn't exist, as if the will reading had never happened. Nobody asked me about the property, the operations, the future of Grandpa's life work. Because in their minds, it didn't matter. The spare got the hotel. So what? I didn't correct them. I didn't brag. I called Victor Alvarez the next day and said, I need to learn everything. For the next 10 months, I quietly took over. Victor was incredible, patient, thorough, deeply loyal to Grandpa's vision. Together, we reviewed every aspect of the operation. Staffing, finances, guest relations, maintenance schedules, vendor contracts. I didn't change much. Grandpa had built something that worked. My job was to protect it, not reinvent it. I visited the hotel every 2 weeks. Sometimes I stayed in Grandpa's old office on the top floor, looking at the ocean from the same window he used to look through. His reading glasses were still on the desk. I never moved them. The hotel turned a healthy profit. Bookings were strong. Staff morale was high. Victor ran the day-to-day with precision, and I handled the bigger picture: reinvestment, minor renovations, long-term planning. Nobody in my family knew any of this. Nobody asked. Then one Sunday afternoon, my mother called. Callan, we're planning a family vacation. A proper reunion, everyone together. Spencer suggested we go to your grandfather's old hotel. For the memories, you know. Wouldn't that be lovely? Spencer suggested it. Of course he did. Sure, Mom. Sounds great. Wonderful. I'll have Spencer's assistant handle the booking. You just show up. You just show up. Story of my life. What Evelyn didn't know was that the second she hung up, I called Victor. Victor, my family is booking a vacation at the hotel. A pause. Do they know you own it? No. Another pause. What do you want me to do? Nothing. Treat them like regular guests. Give them whatever rooms they want. And Victor, don't tell anyone who I am. Understood, sir. One more thing. I'll be staying in Grandpa's private suite. But don't mention it. Not to anyone. We arrived on a Friday afternoon. The whole family, Evelyn and Harold, Spencer and Madeline, and me. Evelyn had also invited a couple of cousins to fill out the reunion feel, but the core group was us 5. The lobby looked beautiful. Victor had clearly prepared for the visit. Fresh flowers on the front desk, Grandpa's photos polished on the lobby wall, the scent of ocean air drifting through the open windows. For a moment, I felt Grandpa's presence so strongly that I almost expected to see him standing behind the reception desk, smiling, saying, "Welcome home, kid." Spencer walked in first, of course. He looked around like he was appraising the place. Madeline was already taking photos. Evelyn was giving Harold a narrated tour of things she remembered. "Your father used to stand right there, Harold. Right there by that column." Harold nodded and checked his phone. The receptionist began handing out room keys. Spencer and Madeline, Ocean View Suite, top floor. Evelyn and Harold, Deluxe Suite, third floor. The cousins, standard rooms, second floor. Then the receptionist looked at her screen, paused, and slid a key across the counter. "Mr. Callan Whitaker, room B7. B, basement level." Spencer didn't even look up. Madeline smirked. My mother glanced at the key, then at me, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "He's the spare. He won't mind." A few laughs. A couple of shrugs. Nobody objected. I picked up the key, looked at it for a moment, and then I looked at the receptionist, who recognized me, of course. She knew exactly who I was. Her eyes were apologetic, almost pained. I gave her the smallest nod, "It's okay," and walked toward the elevator. But I didn't go to B7. I went to the top floor, to the owner's private suite, the one that wasn't on any booking system, the one with the wraparound terrace, the private jacuzzi, and the framed photo of Grandpa and me on the wall, taken when I was 13, standing in front of this very hotel, the day he first told me it would be mine someday. I set my bag down, opened the terrace doors, and looked at the ocean. "I'm here, Grandpa," I whispered. "Let's see what they do." Day one was exactly what I expected. The family gathered for lunch at the hotel restaurant. I arrived last. Nobody had told me the time. I found the table, and the only empty seat was at the far end, squeezed between a pillar and the wall. Spencer sat at the head, naturally. Evelyn next to him. Madeline across from her. Harold at the other end, half present as always. Nobody moved to make room. Nobody said, "Callan, sit here." I sat in my corner and ordered quietly. Conversation flowed around me, not through me. Spencer talked about his firm's latest acquisition. Madeline talked about their upcoming trip to Lake Como. Evelyn talked about redecorating the guest room. Spencer and Maddie might visit more often, so I want it perfect. Harold nodded. At one point, Madeline turned to me and said, with that perfectly polished smile of hers, "So, Callan, how's your little apartment? Still in that same neighborhood?" "Still there," I said. "Cozy," she said, which was Madeline speak for small and beneath us. Spencer leaned back in his chair and said something that made my jaw tighten for the first time that trip. "You know, this hotel could really be something if someone with actual business sense took it over. Dad's father built it, but let's be honest, it needs modernization. New management. A real strategy." Evelyn nodded. "Spencer's right. Your grandfather had charm, but charm doesn't scale a business." They were talking about Grandpa's life work, the thing he poured 50 years into, like it was a fixer-upper. I took a sip of my water and said nothing. Day two was worse. The family planned a beach day. Nobody told me until I ran into them in the lobby, already in swimwear and carrying towels. "Oh, Callan," Evelyn said, surprised. "We're heading to the beach. You're welcome to join." Welcome to join. My own family's outing at my own hotel, and I needed an invitation. I joined. Sat on the far end of the group. Read a book. Nobody spoke to me for 2 hours. That evening, Spencer organized a family dinner on the hotel terrace. He'd apparently asked the restaurant to set up a private table, which they did, because they thought he was just a high-paying guest. During dinner, Spencer dropped the bomb. He stood up, tapped his wine glass, and said, "I've been thinking about this all day, and I want to put something on the table." Literally. Everyone looked at him. This hotel, Grandpa's hotel, it's sitting here, and from what I can tell, the current ownership situation is unclear. The will gave it to Callan. He glanced at me like he was mentioning a footnote. But let's be realistic. A property like this needs professional management, investment, vision. Madeline nodded like she'd rehearsed this. "I've done some preliminary numbers," Spencer continued. "If we pool family resources, we could make an offer to acquire the property, restructure it, turn it into something that actually honors Grandpa's name." Evelyn's eyes lit up. "Spencer, that's a wonderful idea." Harold looked mildly interested for the first time all trip. I've already thought about branding, Madeline added. We could do a full rebrand. Modern, luxurious, Instagram-worthy. Spencer Whitaker Hospitality. Spencer Whitaker Hospitality. Named after him. On Grandpa's hotel. That was left to me. What do you think, Callan? Spencer asked, almost as an afterthought. Everyone turned to me. The spare. The one whose opinion was being requested out of politeness, not genuine interest. I looked at Spencer. Looked at Madeline. Looked at my mother, who was already mentally redesigning the lobby. Interesting idea, I said. Let me think about it. Spencer smiled. The smile of a man who thought he'd already won. That night, I sat in Grandpa's private suite and made 2 calls. The first was to Victor. Victor, tomorrow night. The family dinner. I want the full setup, Grandpa's favorite table, the rooftop terrace, the view of the ocean. His remembrance dinner. Make it special. Consider it done, sir. Anything else? Yes. Be there. In person. I'll need you. The second call was to Grandpa's lawyer. I confirmed what I already knew. The sealed letters were legally mine to distribute at my discretion. No restrictions. No conditions. I opened my suitcase and pulled out the 3 envelopes. Evelyn. Harold. Spencer. Grandpa's handwriting, careful and deliberate. I held them for a long time, turning them over in my hands. Tomorrow, Grandpa, I said quietly. Tomorrow. The rooftop terrace looked stunning. Victor had outdone himself. The table was set with Grandpa's favorite white linen, candles flickering against the ocean breeze, a framed photo of Franklin Whitaker at the center, the one where he's standing in front of the hotel on opening day, young, proud, full of fire. The family arrived in good spirits. Spencer was in a blazer. Madeline had her hair done. Evelyn wore pearls again. Harold had his hands in his pockets. They sat down, admired the setup, and immediately began discussing Spencer's hotel acquisition plan like it was already decided. I spoke to a real estate attorney today, Spencer said casually. He said if the current owner is open to negotiation, we could structure a deal within 60 days. Current owner, Evelyn repeated, smiling. Callan, you'd obviously be included. Maybe a small percentage? Enough to feel involved. A small percentage. Of the hotel Grandpa gave me entirely. Enough to feel involved. I let them talk. I let them plan. I let them carve up Grandpa's legacy over wine and candlelight. Then I saw Victor step through the terrace door. He stood quietly near the entrance, hands clasped in front of him. Our eyes met. I gave him the nod. I stood up. The table went quiet. Before we go any further with this, I said, there's something you should know. Spencer leaned back, looking amused. What's that? You've been talking about making an offer on this hotel. Negotiating with the owner. Restructuring, rebranding. Turning it into Spencer Whitaker Hospitality. I paused. So, I think it's only fair that you know exactly who you'd be negotiating with. I looked at Victor. He stepped forward. Good evening, Victor said, addressing the table. My name is Victor Alvarez. I've been the general manager of the Whitaker Grand for 15 years. I was hired by Mr. Franklin Whitaker, and I currently report directly to the sole owner of this property. He turned to me. Mr. Callan Whitaker. The silence was deafening. Spencer's smirk vanished. Madeline's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. Harold's eyes actually lifted from the table for once. And Evelyn, my mother, stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time in her life. That's not. Spencer stammered. It is, I said. It has been for 11 months. Since the day the will was read. The same will you were all present for. The same one where the lawyers said, clearly, explicitly, that this hotel was left to me. Entirely. But you never said, Evelyn started. I never said anything because nobody ever asked. Not once. In 11 months, not a single one of you asked me about the hotel. About how it was running. About whether I needed help. About what Grandpa's wishes were for this place. Because it didn't matter to you. The spare got the hotel. So what? The word spare hung in the air like smoke. Mom, I said, looking directly at Evelyn. You called me the spare 2 days ago. In the lobby. In front of staff. In front of family. In front of strangers. You gave me a basement room in my own hotel and didn't think twice. Evelyn's face went pale. Callan, I didn't mean you did. You've always meant it. And the worst part isn't that you said it. The worst part is that everyone at this table heard it, and nobody, not one person, said a word. I looked at Harold. He looked away. I looked at Spencer. He was gripping the edge of the table. I reached into the bag beside my chair, and pulled out the 3 envelopes. Grandpa left these, one for each of you. He gave them to me 3 days before he died and told me to give them to you when the time was right. I placed Evelyn's envelope in front of her, then Harold's, then Spencer's. I haven't read them. They're sealed, exactly as he left them. Whatever's inside, those are his words, not mine. Evelyn's hands were trembling as she picked up her envelope. She opened it slowly, pulled out a single handwritten page, and began reading. The change in her face was immediate. Whatever composure she'd been holding collapsed within seconds. Her lips pressed together, her eyes filled, and then, for the first time in my entire life, I saw my mother cry. Not the polished, controlled kind of crying she did at funerals. This was raw, deep, the kind that comes from a wound being torn open. She put the letter down and covered her mouth with both hands. "Mom." Spencer reached for her. "What does it say?" She couldn't answer. She just shook her head. Harold opened his next. He read it in silence, his face unreadable at first. But by the end, his jaw was clenched and his hands had gone still. He folded the letter carefully, put it back in the envelope, and stared at the ocean without blinking. Spencer tore his open impatiently. He read fast, then slowed down, then stopped, then read it again from the beginning. His face went through 4 stages: confusion, anger, disbelief, and finally something I'd never seen on my brother's face before: shame. He put the letter down and didn't look at anyone. The rooftop was silent except for the sound of the ocean. I didn't know exactly what Grandpa wrote to each of them, but I knew Grandpa, and I knew that whatever was on those pages, it was the truth, the kind of truth that only a man facing death has the courage to write. Evelyn spoke first. "He knew," she whispered. "He knew everything. How I treated you. How I favored Spencer. He wrote that he watched it happen for years, and it broke his heart." Her voice cracked. "He said he kept hoping I'd change, that I'd see what I was doing. And when I didn't, he made sure you'd be taken care of, because he couldn't trust me to do it." She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. "He said he chose you, Callan, not because you were perfect, because you were the only one who showed up, the only one who sat with him, the only one who cared about this place, about him, not for what he could give you, but for who he was." I felt my throat tighten, but I held steady. Spencer finally spoke. His voice was low, stripped of its usual confidence. He wrote that I asked him for the hotel. 2 years ago, I went to him and pitched a business plan, told him I could double revenue, modernize everything, bring in investors. He swallowed hard. He said no. He told me I only saw dollar signs. And he wrote that the day I pitched him that plan was the day he decided to leave everything to you. The table fell silent again. Madeline sat perfectly still, saying nothing, understanding for the first time that she'd married into something more complicated than she'd realized. Harold, quiet, distant Harold, spoke for the first time all evening. He wrote that I was a coward. His voice was barely audible, that I watched my own son get pushed aside and never said a word. That my silence was worse than your mother's favoritism because at least she was honest about her bias. I just hid. He looked at me, and for the first time in 31 years, I saw something in my father's eyes that I'd never seen before. Regret. Nobody ate. The candles burned low. The ocean kept its rhythm, indifferent to the wreckage on that rooftop. Evelyn reached across the table toward me. "Callan, please. I know I can't undo 30 years, but I want to try. I want to." "Mom," I said gently, "I didn't do this to hurt you. I didn't do this for revenge. Grandpa asked me to give you those letters when the time was right. And tonight, after 2 days of watching this family treat me exactly the way it's always treated me, tonight was the right time." "What do you want from us?" Spencer asked quietly. "Nothing. I've never wanted anything from any of you except to be seen, to be treated like I belonged at this table, not at the end of it, not in the basement, not as an afterthought, just as family." Spencer nodded slowly. "Grandpa saw it." I continued. "He saw all of it. And instead of confronting you while he was alive, because that wasn't his way, he built a plan. He left me the hotel so I'd have something that was mine. He left you letters so you'd have the truth. And he set up this moment so everyone in this family would finally have to sit with what they've done." I stood up. "I'm not selling this hotel. I'm not sharing ownership. I'm not rebranding it or restructuring it or turning it into anyone's vanity project. This was Grandpa's life. He trusted me with it, and I'm going to honor that." I looked at the framed photo of Franklin Whitaker at the center of the table. Young, proud, building something from nothing. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the vacation. Your rooms are yours. Enjoy the hotel. It's beautiful. Grandpa made sure of that. I turned and walked toward the terrace door. Victor held it open for me. As I passed him, he placed a hand on my shoulder and said, quietly, "Your grandfather would be proud, sir." I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the terrace of the owner's suite, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the stars. The same stars Grandpa and I used to watch from this rooftop when I was a kid. The next morning, something small happened that caught me off guard. There was a knock on my suite door, not from staff, not from Victor. It was Harold. My father stood in the hallway, hands in his pockets, the way he always stands, but his eyes were different. Red-rimmed, tired, present. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. He walked to the terrace, looked at the ocean, and said, "Your grandfather was right. I am a coward. I've been a coward your entire life." He turned to me. "I don't know how to fix 30 years of silence, Callan, but I want you to know, I'm not going to be silent anymore." He didn't hug me. Harold Whitaker doesn't do that. But he put his hand on my shoulder, the same way Victor had the night before, and squeezed. Once. Firmly. It wasn't enough. But it was a start. The family left 2 days later. The vacation ended quietly. No more grand dinners. No more acquisition pitches. No more spare jokes. Spencer barely spoke. Madeline was polite but distant. Evelyn tried. She really tried. To be warmer, more attentive, more present. Whether it would last, I didn't know. Patterns built over 30 years don't break in 48 hours. But something had shifted. The foundation had cracked, and through that crack, for the first time, light was coming in. On the last morning, as the family loaded their luggage into cars, Evelyn walked up to me in the lobby. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. Fragile, almost. "Callan," she said, "I need to tell you something." "Okay." "Your grandfather wrote in his letter that I should know what it feels like. To be overlooked. To be the one nobody prioritizes." She paused. "He was right. I should know. Because I do know. My mother did the same thing to me. My sister was her Spencer, and I was." She couldn't finish. "You were the spare," I said. She nodded, tears streaming. "And I swore I'd never do that to my children. And I did it anyway. I became the thing that hurt me most." I didn't say it was okay. It wasn't. But I put my hand on her shoulder, the way Grandpa used to when someone needed steadying, and said, "Then make sure this is where it stops, Mom. Don't pass it down again." She pulled me into a hug. Tight, desperate, shaking. The kind of hug she should have given me 1,000 times before. I hugged her back. Not because she'd earned it, but because Grandpa would have wanted me to. After they left, I walked through the empty hotel, past the lobby with Grandpa's photos, past the restaurant where Spencer had pitched his takeover plan, past the terrace where the letters changed everything. I ended up in room B7, the basement room, my room, the spares room. I opened the door, looked at the small bed, the exposed pipes, the single window that barely let in light, and I smiled. Because this room, this forgotten, overlooked, tucked-away room, was where Grandpa started. He slept in a room just like this one when the hotel was nothing but a dream and a mortgage he couldn't afford. He was the spare once, too. The one nobody believed in. The one who built an empire from a basement. I pulled the door closed, walked back upstairs to the owner's suite, and sat down at Grandpa's desk. His reading glasses were still there. I picked them up, turned them over in my hands, and placed them back exactly where they were. Then I opened my laptop and got to work. The Whitaker Grand was mine now. Not because I'd taken it from anyone. Not because I'd fought for it. But because I was the only one who ever showed up. They spent 30 years calling me the spare. Grandpa spent his last years making sure the spare was the only one who got the keys. Not to a hotel, to the truth. And the truth is this. The people who overlook you don't define your worth. The people who see you do. Grandpa saw me. And that was always enough.